welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, and I am so glad that you joined us today. I want to introduce you to my guest. He's a very intriguing guy. His name is Brian Kaufman. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Karen.
Glad to have you. We're just delighted that you're with us. So let me tell you a little bit about Brian. Here's what from Kirkus Review wrote about his current novel, A Persistent Echo. We'll ask him to show you the cover in a minute. Kaufman is a fantastic writer with a distinctive poetic touch. It will be the rare reader who will not be moved by this soulful, poignant novel. A remarkable virtuosic, is that how you pronounce that? Performance that will certainly leave persistent echoes in the reader's mind. That's beautiful.
Yeah, lovely.
Isn't that great? So, you know, it looks like from the little research I was able to do on you that you like adding paranormal stuff into books that are not so the reader might be surprised that it's there. And you write historical novels, you have romance. It's all very super cool. So tell us how you think about genre mashups. What inspires this?
Part of it is I read everything.
Mm.
And so I write more than just one kind of story. When I'm writing about relationships, for example, I read a lot of romance novels. It's really good prep. For pacing, I worry about pacing, particularly in a longer novel. So I read thrillers, see how those folks do it. And I hop genres. That's probably not the smartest way to build a career in this, but I like writing different kinds of things. And lately, as I've gotten into this for several decades, I think less about genre. Um,
Mm.
I used to write a column for the college paper. I went to college in my 50s. So I wrote a column, and one of a friend who's somebody I really respected said that he really loved my column because it sounded just like me. And of all the compliments I've ever gotten, that was maybe one of the best. And lately, I've thought, well, let me just write stories that are like me, that sound like
Yeah,
me.
it sounds like you, an authentic voice.
Authentic voice is very important.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Well, okay, so this is the other thing that impressed me. You have 2 books out this year. 2. That
Yeah.
is pretty darn impressive. So before you tell us about the premise of your books, how did that come about? I mean, do you write like in 3-month chunks or something? 2
Well,
books out.
this is the second time that's happened. The first time I had two books coming out within a few months of each other was 2020, the COVID year.
Mm.
And things got split up there. But it's kind of an illusion. I write every day, birthdays, Christmas, uh, constant. And I've been doing this now, I think, for 30 years, seriously.
Mm.
So I, in my mind, I write really slow, but projects, and I'll write more than one project at once.
Mm.
So uh, the fact that they happen to be published the same year is kind of a fluke.
I gotcha. It just depends on the selling of the
On the selling
manuscript
of the book
and
rather than the writing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So writing 2 projects at once, your characters don't get confused in your mind. You don't start writing about one of your characters in the other book because you got confused.
I live in the mountains, and I probably spend 2 hours a day walking or hiking.
Mm.
This is where I keep my health. But I also think while I'm walking, because you can only talk to my dog so much. Uh, and before I really get into writing something, I've got it all out in my head. I've played scenes out in my
Mm.
head. I've done dialogue. My characters are really distinct to me. So, and they keep talking long after the book's done.
Right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Uh, what I should have said was, and there it is.
Yes, and they take us places that we hadn't intended, like in our minds, we were going here,
Absolutely.
and the character is like, no, 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 this is where we're going.
The worst of it was I had a dream once where a character was a real person in the dream and was berating me. Uh, and she was right.
I love that. It's so cool. So, so your two books, let's look at the beautiful covers of your two books. Your this year books.
Right there.
Okay.
Okay, coming
All
right
right.
up.
So Brian has a book that came out in January.
This one, Shadow Melody,
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that great cover. And then he has another one that's coming out in August.
A Persistent Echo.
Persistent Echo. And that's the one that I read you the Kirkus review from. Look at that. Isn't that
Yes.
beautiful? Yeah. So thinking about the Persistent Echo, tell us a little bit about your protagonists. What do you like about them? What are their strengths? What weakness? Tell us about your protagonist.
Um, Persistent Echo is an end of life story, I guess you could say. And
Mm,
my protagonist is 86,
wow.
and he's not well. And he is returning. I like the guy because he's wise. I don't know how else to
Mm,
put it, but his wisdom is rooted in missteps he's made, sins he's committed, mistakes, and he tries earnestly to learn from them. And he's a kind man. He's also a little bit of a persuader, and he does manipulate people a little, which is facilitates what's going on because there are a lot of rough edges in the real world, and he's kind of a smoother. So I
mm.
really like him. One of the reviewers, pre-pub reviewers, said that she wishes August was her grandpa,
Oh, now
which
that's another wonderful
I
compliment,
love it.
isn't it?
Yes, it's such a good compliment.
That is a
So,
beautiful. So his name is August and it's coming out in August.
yes, and I thought that was just a sign.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what's the premise of this story?
It takes place in 1897. The background is real. In 1897, there were hundreds of UFO sightings in Texas,
Hmm,
7 years before the Wright brothers flew. And they're documented in the newspapers. One of them in particular, a UFO airship supposedly crashed into a man's windmill on his farm, burst into flames, and the pilot was killed. The local astronomer verified that the man was not human
wow.
and was buried in the Aurora, Texas cemetery. Uh, Hence the sweatshirt here. Uh, the
Oh
logo at
yeah.
the bottom says
The
the truth
truth
is
is
buried.
buried.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
So, yeah, but that's the background. It's not really about flying saucers or anything.
Mm.
I did a lot of research, and I think I know what the airship mystery was about. And August agreed with me. But the story is more about the past and coming to grips with the past at the end of his life. 15 years earlier, he was in Texas. His wife passed away. There
Mm.
was a lynching and a murder,
Mm.
and all of these elements are tied up with what's going on now. So in 1897. So it's more about that. The
Wow.
title comes the title comes from one of August's quotes. He says, "History may not repeat itself exactly, but there is a persistent echo."
That's a
I
great
th-
line.
I think that human nature doesn't change all that much. And so there
Mhm.
are certain battles like resisting tyranny and resisting bigotry that have to be fought again and again. And there's no guarantee of winning.
Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately. Wow. That's very sobering. So you said that you read all kinds of books. Is there a book or an author that had a huge personal impact on you or on your writing style? Or is there anybody that comes to mind?
Well, impact on writing, I can think of a couple. John Gardner's book, The Art of Fiction,
Mm,
is amazing. And a close second would be Chuck Palahniuk's, I'm drawing a blank. Consider this.
mm,
Um, they're both books on writing. Um, Sometimes I think the craft of writing is like a toolbox, and those books are just chock full of tools. They're
wow.
really well done, particularly The Art of Fiction. There's a chapter called Common Errors, and they're common
Mm.
errors because everybody does them, and they're things to avoid. And he's so straightforward and sharp about how you can avoid them and things to look out for.
Ah, well,
And
we
they
have a
aren't
lot
beginner
of,
mistakes. They're stuff I do every day.
yes, yes, mistakes that we have to constantly keep working on our craft, right? We're always
Yes.
working on our craft. But for those of you out there that are writing your first or second book, this might be a perfect book for you to pick up. Is there anything that you read recently that you just finished, or that you could recommend to our audience?
I'm hopping genres again,
Hmm.
and I've never written a series before, and now I'm working on a series. And
Oh.
it's noir. So a lot of what I've been reading is noir. There's a collection of short fiction called Boston Noir, and it's edited by Dennis Lehane, who's a
Mm,
genius. He is a
hmm.
genius. His short story, I think it's called Animal Rescue, is one of the best pieces of fiction I've ever read.
Mm.
So uh, I recommend that one. Uh, I've been reading so much uh, noir that I'm suddenly flooding
Yes,
here.
it's a
Colson Whitehead, Harlem
yes.
Shuffle. It's like three novellas. The thing I love about that is the protagonist, and it's done in first person. The protagonist runs a furniture store, and in the middle of these crime stories, somewhat horrific, he suddenly starts talking about the virtues of this or that couch. The voice is so authentic. I've known guys who are just, when you ask a man, who are you? He's going to tell you what he does for a living. This guy is a furniture guy. And it's just in the midst of this crime novel, uh, he suddenly starts talking about cushions and and upholstery, and I just absolutely love that book. So
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a very good one. I enjoyed it very much. Um, my latest novel takes place in Harlem, and so I read lots and lots and lots and lots of books about Harlem. I was reading in preparation of writing
and
True
that's yeah,
Grace. Yeah, just like you
yes.
do. You read the genre that you're in, the period that you're in. So that is awesome, awesome. And what day does let's repeat the this year's novel, the one that's going A Persistent
A
Echo.
Persistent Echo,
And
August
what day?
24th.
August
24th.
August 24th. All right, so just in a few weeks. So I hope that you guys will follow Brian. So Brian, how can they follow you? Where can they connect with you?
authorbrian.com. Oh, excuse me, authorbriankaufman.com. That's the
Author
best
Brian.
way.
Excellent. Good, good, good.
And
So I,
I've
I
got a
hope,
mailing list there they could sign up for. And I do a lot of articles about writing, so maybe it's helpful for anyone who does writing sites. So
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah. So thank you so much, Brian. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I hope you will follow Brian. I hope you will buy his books. And when you do, be sure to tell him and say, I met you, Brian, on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Until next week, everybody, have a great, great week. Bye-bye.